A friend of the show, NFL Network data analytics expert Cynthia Frelund joins us now to talk all things NFL draft because she has been diving into this content for months now. I was saying earlier on the show, Cynthia, that we spoke in maybe it was January, and I was asking you what you were up to, and you're like, oh, I'm already on the NFL draft. I'm like, the playoffs haven't even started. You're already looking at the NFL draft? That's crazy.
This is a wild year. I've never seen such an age spread between the oldest and youngest players in this draft class. So I'm having to kind of rewrite how I do things based on people moving around. You're getting different systems and different fits for people all in college now, whereas before we never really had to worry about that. So it's a whole new world of draft prognostication, never an easy day.
You're doing it the right way, though. You came out with a pre-off-season mock draft, and you put the Bills with Kenneth Grant, which he's like one of 70,000 times he's been mocked. But then you're not coming out with another mock until this next week, which is, believe me, that's the way to do it. We have asked our viewers and listeners what trait is the most important to them when they're, forget about the position. Like if you're going to get whatever position, what's the trait that you want? Is it measurables? Is it height, weight, speed? Is it intangibles? Is it leadership? Is it, is it the, team captain, that kind of thing? Is it production? Is it the guy, he killed it in college, and no matter how big or little he is, he's great, right? What about an analytics person like you, our favorite analytics person? What do you look for? What's your favorite trait?
All of the above. No, I think the thing I'm looking at this year in particular is your ability to learn, because the system from college to football now, especially for the Bills, is very different. The what's expected of you at this next level and what's expected on you on a roster like the Bills that have Super Bowl aspirations every single year. That is your ability to learn and fast, I think, is a really interesting characteristic that us as outsiders, everyone can look at the same production. Everyone has access to watching all of the college film you want, all of the, measurements from the combine, whatever you want there. But when a player gets in the room with their potential defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, coach, etc., and they can describe what's going on, and that this, and then you can map it to the production, map it to what you're going to expect them to do. I think setting people up for success, that is my number one trait that I would look for if I were, in the position of, maybe my favorite GM in the league, but don't tell him because, he's on his head to get too big.
Maddie, tell her what I just said about my favorite trait.
Okay. In the segment before, we've been discussing this. Mine was I want you to have the want to, the effort, the 110% on every play. You put your body on the line for the football. And then Steve was like, okay, as we're talking about this, I'm saying intelligence. So he is right there with you in terms of what he wants out of a prospect who Buffalo is going to take in the first round.
Yeah, smart players always get better. Dumb ones are the same guy in their year 12 as they are in year 1 or they don't ever make it to 12 if they're not that smart.
I was about to say, that's if they make it.
Right, that's if they make it. But, right, you need a guy that can take it all in and show it on the field, right?
And now more than ever, I'm looking at these. I'll use a spot that the Bills are very fortunate not to really need as offensive linemen. I'm looking at all of the different ways that colleges are playing, and with these quarterbacks transferring and going to different schools, I don't know. Find me a pulling guard. I'll wait. Like you don't have those types of things right away. So your ability to learn and your ability to adapt, that's going to be a really big differentiator, especially in this draft class, and probably as we sort out the Big Ten, the SEC, and then everyone else, and then the transfer portal. As everything changes in college, the bubble of it will pop for a little while here in the NFL.
Okay, I love this. The ability to learn what's going on in college football right now with the NIL, the transfer portal. We're seeing so many different players transfer year to year who come out of college with 3 different colleges, and scouting departments are having a hard time figuring out, how do we decipher all of this? How do we know if this player has that ability to learn? When you look at that, when you pair learning with playing for multiple colleges, how does that translate in the NFL?
Well, some things are easier to figure out than others. For example, this is a really strong defensive line class, both on the edge and in the middle. And if you're looking at those guys, you can't train burst, right? Like how fast you're able, your instincts get you off that line. That's just, it is what it is, right? But then you're looking at other positions, safeties, linebackers, off-ball linebackers, guys who maybe you aren't looking at in round one necessarily, but that you would be interested in later rounds. And that's going to be where those little tiny differences make a big deal. One guy that I think could be a fun ad for the Bills, and I know a little bit about it. I went to Boston College. So Donovan Ezaraku, the edge rusher from BC, that's an interesting one because he, in particular, having Bill O'Brien as his coach, has a little bit of a different kind of resume than some of the other guys. And while the burst is there and the stuff that kind of the intangible stuff is there too, you could see him progress through and learn a little bit more than some of the other guys who had a cup of coffee here and a cup of tea over there.
One of the things about the transfer portal is we've got a guy like the running back Ray Davis. He was productive at Kentucky. He was productive at Vanderbilt. He was productive at his other third. He was at 3 different schools and was productive at all of them. So, and I know that means a lot of carries and a lot of wear on the tires for a running back, but other players as well. They go to, like this Trey Amos. He was at Alabama. He was at LSU. Now he's at Ole Miss. Now, Alabama. You've seen them play in different spots and be productive or at least have an evaluation. And then you can at least, the transposition of like, why was he successful here and not there? It really helps the evaluation process, does it not?
In certain positions, I would say for certain positions, yes. For other positions, no. Offensive linemen, I think it's not good. Running backs, some wide receivers, depending on what they're asked to do, and tight ends specifically, like that will help. But like I said, some of the guys in the middle who it's a little muddier what they were asked to do because we don't know as outsiders, that can make it harder. So for some evaluations, better, easier. For some evaluations, not as easy.
Okay, let's take this a step further because I find the NIL and transfer portal fascinating. When you have, it's totally position by position. When you have different guys transferring to different schools, are you finding the tape that you're digging through right now? Are you finding that colleges are simplifying their offenses and defenses so that guys can come in and play right away rather than have a year or two to learn what's actually going on?
Yes, and I would go a little further as to say it's not like we saw, let's talk about, something that the Bills do really well, playing with a lot of defensive backs. Let's just say that doesn't really happen in college. Things are, zone versus man in college, very different looking. What's a penalty in college? Very different from what's a penalty in the NFL, or it can be at least, right? So when you're looking at some of these differences, simplifying it helps them win games. Remember, they also only play like 9 games in college, right? It's like some of these guys aren't really playing a ton of snaps. So it's interesting to see when you are making it a little bit simpler, or it actually tends to favor more offensive output. You're not seeing as much of the tricks on defense, the things you don't really see false leverage, meaning showing man and it's really zone or et cetera. So you're just not seeing some of those advanced concepts. It just means that it adds more volatility to the projection because you don't have a resume point saying someone's been able to do something.
And then one more. Why is it so important now more than ever to have a scouting department that is elite at sifting through these things and figuring out, yes, this can translate on our team in this offense or in this defense?
One of the things the scouts don't get enough credit for, in my opinion, is they're amateur psychologists. I don't even know if they're amateurs, but they're psychologists. They're able to help assess fit. And I'm not talking about if some guy's a bad guy or a good guy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fit that's like, what is a Bill? These are the characteristics. We all want to be mission driven. We all want to have the same mission, right? And some people's character fits better in certain places than others. So their ability to go through and say, okay, before you used to have 3 years of data at Ole Miss, and you could talk to kind of the same people. How did this guy grow SID when he came in as a freshman? And is he still we have a lot of ego if you're a highly rated guy that comes in, right? Or has he grown and become more humble and more, centered or whatever it is? You don't have that those data points throughout time, you have them at different places. Maybe you go in one place and you were a little rowdy, and then you go to the third place and you're really calm. What's the truth?
Right.
That's where your scouts really have to do the fine tuning of the evaluation. These are, for the most part, really good kids. Like, all of them are good, but like, video games can be a source of consternation for certain coaches, and other coaches don't care. Right. So you have to know what your priorities are and be able to assess them. And that's where your scouts are now private investigators, psychologists, profilers. There we go. All of it.
Okay, so we're 8 days away, and we're going to get a chance to hear your second mock draft coming up at the weekend or after the weekend. How do you think the top of this draft is going to fall? Do you think there's going to be some movement in the top 5? Do you think, is there going to be any surprises up there? This has been one of the most quiet first round, no trade ups, no trade downs thus far in a long time. So how do you think it's going to go on draft night?
This would be the first draft in common draft era where every team is picking in their like natural place, if no one makes any trades. I kind of want that to happen because that's wild, but I don't think it will happen, but I kind of want to. I think we'll end up seeing someone trade back in for a quarterback at the end, probably Jackson Dart, whatever. But, that's something where, I think Shador ends up landing in New Orleans. Some people can think that's a slide. I don't necessarily think that's a slide. That's where he actually mock drafted him there at that one ahead of the Super Bowl. But my point is I think given the, Derek Carr potentially not being able to play because of a shoulder injury, et cetera, I just don't think he gets past there. Now, could someone trade up at 8? Sure. I think some of the things that we'll see from surprise standpoints, last year we had all those quarterbacks, so it was so exciting, but this year I think it will be like, does Will Johnson go very high? Are people really concerned about Abdul Carter's foot? These are storylines that are really Buffalo it doesn't matter, right? Because they won't be able to be picking that high anyways. Right. But, is Abdul Carter's foot going to be prohibiting him from being a top 5? I don't know. Some people say that that's going to happen. Other people are like, no, he's just the best prospect here. Where Travis Hunter ends up, I think will be fascinating because I think he's such a dynamic player that he is probably the one I'm most interested to see as a pro, just, two-way player, but also his personality and his ability to learn. I got a chance to watch him learn firsthand, and he is a smart kid. He's a really football smart kid. So again, all of these are not Bills storylines, but they're top of the draft storylines. I think
for sure
surprises could be some of those polarizing players like the Will Johnsons, cornerback out of Michigan.
Right now, Buffalo sits at number 30, and a lot is going to happen before they're on the clock. Who knows? Maybe they could trade up or trade out of the first round. As you think about where they sit, what are some players who you believe are good fits for Buffalo at the bottom of the first round?
Well, at the bottom of the first round, I would not be surprised if you're fielding a call from, a team that's in Cleveland that maybe doesn't know what's going on with their quarterback always. But I wouldn't be surprised if they trade down just a little bit. Cleveland, again, just a reminder, they're drafting at 33. That's their next pick in the second round. So don't be surprised if the Bills fleece the Eagles. I would love it, by the way. And because Howie Roseman's like, we don't have 32 first round graded players. We never do. So basically he's telegraphing that he wants to trade. But when I'm looking at the opportunity here, there's so many great, defensive front players that could be a nice addition. I really hope Donovan Ezeraku does fall to a range where the Bills could get him. He's versatile. He can be used in a lot of different formations. Nobody plays like a static front anymore. Who plays base defense? No one. So I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at these types of players that have the capacity to be, like I said, I can tell you he has more of a resume point where he learned and got better every single season he played. And, playing for a pro style head coach is an advantage right off the bat. So some of those things, that's one where I would be interested in right there for a little more, youth up front. I like the moves this offseason, but I think defense has to be the move. And I think if it's not an edge rusher, maybe one of the corners falls. I doubt it, though, just because the premium at that position is so high.
We've seen as well around the league, and you said it, GMs, they put it out. Carolina has said, yeah, we're open for business. We'll trade back. And they're at number 8. I don't know how valuable it's going to be at number 8, depending on what happens. But Carolina needs help. They could do for some extra draft picks. Minnesota's got 4 picks in this entire draft. They don't pick until 24th. They are obviously open for business to get some more picks. Who's the most likely? I mean, because a lot of these teams, there's no way they're going to sit tight.
Well, you can tell that I love the GM tree, right? So we have a guy down in Carolina that comes from, he's a very familiar face to our guy Brandon Beane, but
Right.
it basically what I'm looking at there is that's a smart move by them to at least say it, because that would be the one way if you wanted Shador, because I do think that the Saints have him circled. If he's there, I think they turn the card in right away. Now, if you want to jump ahead of them, that would have to be the spot. I think that's where, that would be one open for business. Makes a lot of sense. Perhaps it could be a smart trade for someone there. So yes, I think that's possible, but I actually don't think Carolina's lying to us. I don't think they're sitting there being like, we are one player away that we could pick at number 8 from going to a Super Bowl. So I actually think that's not a lie. Like, I think a lot of people right now are telling us some fibs, just, I like a good lie. It's fun, usually this time of year we hear Kyle Shanahan, he's my favorite lying liar who lies. I say that to his face. But he's like, I'm not sure if we're here on Sunday, blah, 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 blah. But I actually do believe that Carolina's there. Now, the Raiders could be a wild card in that, though I don't think that they're going to be targeting quarterback. I think they're probably hoping like an Ashton Genty falls to them, which is a wild pick from the analytics standpoint. But they have a lot of needs too. So I don't know if the Raiders are really in the market, but I think it's possible.
Cynthia, as we sit about a week away from the NFL draft, what is a data analytics expert like yourself doing in the final countdown till the Tennessee Titans are on the clock with the first overall pick?
So I play this fun game. Fun is, that's the word you could use for whatever. But, where I look at how, what can we be doing? So on draft night, I'll be in Green Bay. I'm very fortunate to be able to be there. And some of the things that, it's like, how do we communicate with all the people that are there, some interesting stuff that's going on. It's hard to do, right? So it's like, what are some of these polarizing players that could jump up? Who's the Michael Penix Jr. of this potential draft class that people could be like, what's going on? So trying to run simulations of drafts, and if this wonky things happens, if Joe Shane does take a quarterback, which I feel like today he kind of said no, but if that stuff does happen, then what else could happen too? How many in each position could go in the first round? Because I just want everyone to pick. I want to be like, I was in Green Bay when everyone picked in their natural select. What a weird thing to want for my resume, but I'd put that right on the resume.
Well, you are an analytics person, so it starts out. I will say this, though. I agree with you. I've been saying it for weeks. I don't think there's any way the Bills pick 30th. I think they're going to move up or back. I think they're going to move. If there's a guy that falls within striking distance, they'll go get him.
Yep.
And if he doesn't, and if there's more than they anticipated at a position they want, they'll drop back and take one that's available, like they did last year. I do think this, though. When it gets into the 20s, there's going to be a spot where 6 out of 10 picks are going to be one spot, one position, like defensive line, edge, or defensive lineman, tackle, something like that. At some point in the first round, there's going to be a stretch where they're going to start to come off the board fast and furious. Do you see a run like that?
I do. I don't know if it depends on if people go edge first. So remember, the context here is that, if you draft in the first round, you get one more year of flexibility in terms of signing a long-term, more expensive deal. So the rookie contract, more favorable, obviously, if you can keep it for one more year for one of those top 5 expensive positions. So if there starts to be a run on edge rushers, yes. Defensive tackles, they don't really get that same sort of, money in the second career. So that one could be maybe pushed back a little bit depending on how people feel about these quarterbacks and if they feel like they absolutely have to go get one in the first round or not.
I know you mentioned that cornerback. It'll be interesting to see if there's any value left at 30 in terms of guys that are worth drafting in the first round. You mentioned Will Johnson in one of your answers. what is the farthest you think he falls? Because I have this dream in my brain, Cynthia, that he falls and somehow falls to, let's say, 15, which I know is probably impossible. But then the Bills decide, okay, well, if he's there, then let's go up, because they have a lot of picks to do things with. So in your mind, what's the farthest that he can fall before he's yanked off the board?
So not picking in their natural position, but I think a place where we could look is the Steelers. So in the 20s, early 20s, 21. I don't think he gets past there. Not that I necessarily think the Steelers are going to take him, but I think that they're in an interesting position where, are they really going to go with Mason Rudolph? Like, what's going on there? So I think 20 could be the absolute lowest. He's one of my, like, if he ended up in Buffalo, I would be very happy. And
Yeah.
I love a good, to me, it's a Midwest connection. I think Buffalo's the Midwest. That's a compliment. I'm from Michigan. I'm a Will Johnson fan. Like, that's a compliment. So
I got to ask you this, though. How high, realistically, can you expect the Bills to be able to jump from 30, into the mid-20s, or like 4 or 5 spots? I mean, because it's expensive.
They got 2 2s. They got no 3. They got 2 4s, 3 5s.
They got 109 and 132 in the 4th round, 56 and 62 in the 2nd, and then 3 5ths and 2 6ths. So
the good news is that if you're only going up to 20, like, I think you could 9 slots. I think you could do 8 slots, something like that. Anything above 15, it's not. First of all, not gonna happen. No way. I mean, I would be, not no way, I guess, but very slim chances that would be a situation that I think that the Bills get in. I think they have a proven track record of their later round picks are players. So they're not picks, they're players. See Benford, Christian. So it's like, I don't think they want to give up some of the guys that they think they have a disproportionate edge on later on in the draft. So it like I said, 20, I think they could get up to 20. But I will say, you're looking at tight ends on the screen right now. The tight ends could throw a wrench in this too. Like, obviously the Bills don't need a tight end. So if the guys like a Tyler Warren, who I think will also come off the board really fast, that could push some people down that in other drafts would be higher. So perhaps that's one of the ways, like maybe a little fight between, like, the Colts and the Broncos for Tyler Warren, something like that. Colson Loveland's one of those guys. So I understand that's not a position we talk about a lot. Same thing with running backs. We don't talk about them a lot in the first round, but for the tight end fans out there, I will remember the rookie receiving record is held by a tight end who plays for the Raiders. So broke Mike Ditka's record. So I think that people are now less afraid to take the first round swing on a tight end than before, which is great news when you're picking 30th and you don't need a tight end.
I love it. Cynthia, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about the NIL, transfer portal, analytics, and the NFL draft. We covered it all and feel a lot more ready for Thursday thanks to you.
I miss you guys. Hope to see you soon.